Hello, my name is Ling Yi and I have been a volunteer with Singapore Hospice Council since 2020. During the day and on some nights, I work in the healthcare sector. Outside of work, I run a website called Before Beyond, where I share my stories and experiences dealing with grief. My grief journey began in 2019 when my mother was diagnosed with cancer. In 2020, despite undergoing surgery and chemotherapy, the cancer recurred and spread. In January 2021, she passed away at home, where she wanted to be. Walking the grief journey has not been easy and has been filled with many ups and downs. I hope that sharing my experiences will help others be able to navigate the grief terrain better. At the very least, I hope that I can let people know that they are not alone in their journey. I am just a single person sharing my experiences, adding to the patchwork tapestry of grief. We all experience loss at some point of time in our lives. Creating an environment that is conducive for individuals to grieve healthily is a goal that we can work towards. I would like to express my gratitude to Grief Matters for organising Singapore's very first virtual conference, highlighting the stories of bereaved individuals. In this time of social distancing, it is even more important that we band together to remember the people that we have lost and acknowledge and celebrate the growth that arises out of making sense of the pain. Work is something that takes up a huge part of our lives. According to 2020 statistics provided by the Ministry of Manpower, Singaporeans work an average of 44 hours per week, which averages to roughly 8.8 hours per weekday. Assuming that we sleep a good 7 hours per night, this means that 40% of our waking hours is spent in the workplace, where we are expected to function as professionals. Being a professional means achieving high levels of efficiency, being a productive member of the team, maintaining a happy, or at least neutral and calm appearance, being present and focused, and putting the company's needs above your own. For someone who is experiencing grief, being professional could be in direct conflict with many of the things a grieving person needs, such as taking time to recover at their own pace, being allowed to let their emotions manifest when it comes, and prioritizing themselves when going through a difficult time. Striving to meet professional standards can cause a person to feel disillusioned and detached, and this can complicate the healing process. When my mother was diagnosed with cancer and had just undergone surgery, every day after work I would fly to the hospital because I wanted to be by her side. I stopped all social activities and limited my personal time to just a couple of hours of exercise and blogging per week. I watched my colleagues surge forward in their careers as they dedicated their time and energy to refining their professional skills, while I struggled with the question, how does one balance grief and work? Today, we will be talking about how does grief come to exist in the work setting? Why is it so difficult for grief to exist in a professional setting? And what helps to make things better? How does grief come to exist in the work setting? People usually assume that grief starts at the point of death of a person. However, as living with terminal illnesses become more and more common, it becomes increasingly important to acknowledge the presence of anticipatory grief. Anticipatory grief is the grief reaction that occurs pre-death. Upon receiving knowledge of imminent death, grieving begins in response to multiple losses, such as the loss of normalcy in terms of stability and uncertainty about the future, the loss of opportunities to get married, to see children grow up, to meet and carry their grandchildren, and the loss of independence in terms of physical function and cognitive ability. Recognizing that anticipatory grief is as real as grief arising from bereavement is important because it can last for a significant amount of time before death occurs. While society acknowledges and manages bereavement grief in the form of compassionate leave, anticipatory grief often does not officially warrant time off work. When we, as human beings, move about in a work setting, the boundaries between personal and professional is porous, and this is natural. Even if we want to pretend that the hot flashes of menopause, the tummy cramps that herald diarrhea after drinking coffee with milk, and the racing thoughts and sweaty palms that come before making a presentation to a large audience, even if we act like these things don't bother us, the truth is, it does. And sometimes this affects our ability to perform well at work. When dealing with a pain as intense as the loss of a loved one, it can manifest in many ways, such as crying, withdrawal from social interactions, inability to focus, feeling tired all the time, and snapping at people. This can happen anywhere, at team huddles, meeting with clients, talking to your boss, in your work cubicle, and even in your workplace toilet. Why is it so difficult for grief to exist in a professional setting? Well, first of all, there are often very few private spaces to hide in a workplace if you want to break down or cool off. Sometimes intense grief can manifest in an extremely unexpected moment. I don't have a personal workstation at work, but there are desks that people can use to eat alone. And there was once I was having lunch and reading emails, and one of the emails reminded me of how my mom had accompanied me for medical appointments, and I just broke down and cried. Thankfully, at that point of time, I had tissue paper with me. Secondly, people are constantly expecting things from you, and they either have no idea that you're going through a difficult time, or they do know, but just that because for whatever reason, maybe perhaps they're so stressed out themselves that they place additional pressure on you as well. There was once I had told a colleague about my home situation and teared up when I was talking about how difficult things were, and the week after, the same colleague suggested that I should do more work outside of my stipulated work time. Thirdly, it is actually very difficult to take time off work even when you feel that you need to. And this really depends on the terms and conditions of your work contract. Some people aren't even entitled to any annual leave at all. Depending on your contract, if you need to take extended leave, you will usually need to clear all of your annual leave before you can start to take no pay leave, which is fine at first until you return to work and realize that you don't have any more annual leave that you can take to deal with an acute grief flare or even for rest and relaxation like the rest of the world has. Fourthly, financial considerations. If you take time off work to spend with your dying loved one or to allow yourself space to grieve, will you have enough savings to tide you through? Are you comfortable to go without pay for an extended period of time? Will a job still be there for you when you return? Last but not least, there is always the worry that your work performance may jeopardize your career ambitions. Taking time off work may mean that you may miss some amazing opportunities. So, what helps to make things better? Sometimes it may feel as though the world doesn't care or that no one around you understands, but that isn't always entirely true. Tilak Mandadi, an empathy advocate, had lost his daughter unexpectedly and suddenly, and in the aftermath, in his reflections, he said, "We all experience grief and loss in our lives. For most of us, that means at some point of time, getting up and getting back to work while living with the grief. On those days, we will continue to carry the incredible burden of sadness, but also a hope that work itself can restore for us that much-needed sense of purpose." Work instills a sense of routine and progress and can give us purpose in life. Although it is challenging to balance grief and work, a change in perspective and development of healthy habits can go a long way in making the task more manageable. Number 1, accepting that there are some things that the workplace cannot provide. Fundamentally, businesses have professional agendas to achieve, and employee welfare isn't always their top priority. By understanding that it was not the responsibilities of my colleagues to look out for me, it helped to lower my expectations. I didn't get angry or hold grudges against people who clearly knew that I was going through a difficult time but didn't bother to talk to me or ask me how I was. Instead, I felt grateful whenever anyone at all checked how I was coping. Number 2, even if people don't ask, it may still be helpful to initiate the conversations in some cases. I made it a point to inform my supervisors several months before my mom passed away that I may suddenly have to take time off work. I also warned my colleagues whose workloads would be directly affected by my departure. When first returning to work, I also let my work supervisor know about the recent death and how I was currently coping. Informing people should not be seen as an attention-seeking attempt, but rather as an attempt to be responsible by preempting the relevant parties that you may require help or time off. For employers, bosses, and superiors, this is an opportunity for you to build loyalty. Showing concern and making an effort to check on grieving employees every once in a while helps to build a workplace culture that encourages empathy and compassion. Number 3, have a good life outside of work. If the death of a loved one has taught me anything, it would be the lesson to live life fully before we die. Making sure that you are living your best life is part of learning how to show yourself the love and care that you deserve. After my mom passed away, I went on an unexpected adventure. I did an open water diving certification course, even though I was really scared of diving. I volunteered to work at a coffee shop. I learned how to skate and tried out the ramps at the skate park for the first time in my life. I got a busking license. I sang at an online singing recital. I made a website. I learned to cook food that my mom used to make. I made art, lots and lots of art. I'm not great at any of these, but it made me feel whole, and that was important to me. Find passion projects. It doesn't need to be big and impact loads of people. Just focus on looking after yourself and taking charge of your personal growth. These activities will fuel you when other aspects of your life and work drain you. Number 4, build a support group. If you feel that your colleagues cannot give you the support that you need, speak to your friends. If you feel that your current friends cannot empathize with your situation, go out and meet more people and listen to their life views and find people who can understand you. It will be difficult, but if you manage to find a connection with someone, trust me, it will be worth it. Before Beyond has a virtual death cafe for people to come and chat about anything death related at any time of the day and night. Number 5, decide if taking time off work is something that will help you. I received many conflicting opinions on this matter. Some people said, "Why haven't you stopped working yet?" And it made me feel guilty for not spending more time with my family. Other comments made me feel lousy for not being able to handle both work and personal life at the same time. It is important to understand that only you will know what is best for yourself. You are the only person who understands the complexities of the challenges that you face. There will always be people who question your decisions, but really, how do they know what it's like to be you? I took 6 months off work, 3 months before my mom's death and 3 months after. This period of time was good for me, but it isn't the same for everyone. Some people need less time, some people need more. There's no right or wrong. Ultimately, everyone's grief journey is unique, but the grief that we face never entirely disappears. People expect grief to fade away with time and expect life to return to normal. However, in reality, we just find ways to integrate grief and the lessons that we learn from it into our everyday lives. learning how to live with grief in the professional setting is important because it takes up such a huge aspect of our lives. I hope that what I have shared today is useful in helping you find a balance between grief and work. Once again, I would like to thank Grief Matters for organising Tapestries of Grief. I would also like to thank Singapore Hospice Council for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences, and my family and friends for teaching me what it means to love and be loved. Do check out Before Beyond's website to find more resources on grief and death. Thank you.